Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington. And I'm here today with Dan Manning of Dan Manning Photography. And I was going to make a joke. We've been frustrated here for the last few minutes trying to get the audio situated here in the room. I was going to make a joke that I was trying to equate what interviewing Dan Manning would be like for a wedding vendor podcast interview. And I think that it would be like if I was a Survivor podcast and I had to interview Jeff Probst, because Dan is really quite prolific in the Seattle wedding and Snohomish wedding community, and somebody that I respect, and I only mean that half joking. So Dan, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you tell us who you are and a little bit about what you do?
So I'm Dan with Dan Manning Photography. And I'm a wedding and portrait specialist photographer based out of Snohomish, Washington. And everything I do is about beautiful photos and an amazing client experience.
And we're at Dan's awesome studio down here in Snohomish. Tell us a little bit about where you are and where we're located.
Yeah, so we're on First Street in downtown Snohomish. It's a really awesome historic district that's pretty cool. It's one of those unique places where people actually purposely drive to park their car and get out and walk and check out the shops and all that, and great restaurants and things like that. So it's kind of unique to have a studio storefront as a photographer. So it's just an office that we call our studio. But there's nobody I've ever heard of that's a photographer that has a space like this, where it's actually an office that's in a commercial area.
Well, and I thought it was cool because, like, when I pulled up, you were sitting here importing footage, kind of looking out. We got a banjo playing down the road. I don't know if we hear that on the audio, but you're sitting here, door open, kind of the wind whipping through. I mean, it's a nice. I would have to think it would be a good creative outlet and a good space to not only serve as an editing place, but also to attract clients and such.
Yeah, it's been really great on that one. Definitely get a decent amount of people walking in here and saying hi and all that. Going to meet a lot of awesome people. Shop owners down here are fantastic. We have several different companies that are wedding vendors that are actually here on First Street. So there's Laney Meg, which is a dress shop just right down the street. The Snohomish Pie Shop company that I share a wall with does a lot of pies and things like that for weddings. And it's just good people watching, which obviously can be a distraction, because I'm definitely a people watcher. But it's super fun. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, and it's our friends got married years ago down here. I guess it's called Crossroads now.
Yep.
When they got married there, it was Thomas Family Farm, and we came up here and did photos and stuff. I know this gazebo well and kind of the whole waterfront. I guess it's the Snohomish River, right?
Yes.
Borders. Well, cool. So tell me a little bit about what you guys do in terms of weddings, portraits, proposals, engagements, things like that. Tell me a little bit about what sets you guys apart, or what's kind of your calling card.
I think generally, like, our brand, and I say our, it's my wife and I, she's very much involved behind the scenes. Our brand is definitely like the Northwesty kind of nature, epic location kind of photos. If you were to be here in my studio, you'd see that my pillows are in the shape of mountains, and there's a lot of natural wood in here, a lot of art in here that actually kind of is that style. And we tend to draw a lot of clients who really love nature and kind of almost the blend of beautiful landscape photography mixed with really stunning portraiture. So that's kind of, if anything, I think is like our calling card for the style of shooting. And then on the business side of it, everything is about really high level customer service. So giving your clients an amazing experience that pretty much nobody else provides.
And I was only being halfway facetious with my introduction, talking about, but you are somebody that I've seen as, that I've kind of joined this community in the last couple of years in weddings and seeing people post online. But, I knew the name Dan Manning before we even met kind of face to face a few months ago, getting ready for the Snohomish wedding tour. So, it's really cool to finally kind of meet you. We've met now and talked, but, to sit down face to face. And I really appreciate, your time and having me into your space. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So if you weren't doing the podcast right now, what would you kind of be working on, or what would you be doing?
Man, a lot of different stuff. As a wedding photographer and as a portrait photographer, I kind of refer it to like the iceberg kind of ideology where, our clients only see about 3% of our work that we actually do of actually shooting. So it's importing photos, culling, which means you're narrowing down the photos and then obviously enhancing the photos. But, yeah, definitely a lot of that behind the scenes. So I just had a really amazing engagement session with some clients last night. So as you got here, I was importing those photos to go through, and it was an insanely amazing session where the couple, you normally have to kind of pose couples and kind of give them instructions on how to stand and how to do all that. And it could have been completely silent. We almost didn't have to say a word to these guys. They were super connected and just interacted together, and we really like the lifestyle, non-posed kind of candid style of just documenting their love and not really telling them how to be. And so it was great, and it was the most perfect. we got a horn honking. It was the most perfect sunset I think I've ever seen in my life. So I'd probably be right now going through those photos, or I'd also be hanging out with my kids at home.
Isn't it nice when you have couples that, and I don't even think like, I even know like how comfortable I would be with my wife or, if she was my girlfriend, like posing and whatnot. But like we had a wedding on Sunday and it was the same kind of thing where like, you don't even need to pose them right. Like they were kind of existing in their own space. And I was working with Megan Montalvo down at Indian Summer, and I yelled out, I'm like, man, I really wish you guys, were more comfortable together. Cause they were so comfortable and they were so, how good is that for you in terms of like creative energy to be able to feed off of that?
It's fantastic because I can just actually focus on coming up with really great angles and paying attention to just the lighting in general. And I don't have to worry about trying to get them to actually look at each other or to give each other a kiss or to have the traditional like relationship roles of a man and a woman of have her like snuggle into him and do all of that. I don't have to try to show them how to be in a relationship. They just kind of do it on their own naturally. And so I just focus on the technical details, and it creates even better photos. And photography is all about chemistry. It's about the photographer's chemistry with the clients, but more importantly, it's the client's interaction with each other. So to have them just innately have that perfect chemistry without us telling them what to do just is so much more authentic in the photos. You can actually see it.
When you guys are doing the engagement sessions, I can't remember, I was having a conversation recently with another photographer that, I always lament as a videographer, I don't get to do that a lot. You can do like day of kind of in the life or pre-wedding. I'm editing a pre-wedding video right now, but like talk about being able to do the engagement session without, maybe the time constraints that you have at a wedding day.
Yeah.
Where, you guys can really like pick the time, pick the location, the weather, but, talk about that.
So I actually meet with my clients ahead of their engagement session, or even if it's family photos, I meet with my clients ahead of time. Like I said, portrait photography is about connection. So not everybody's a professional model. So it's about, first of all, setting the foundation of actually getting to know people ahead of time, letting them get to know you. And so when you actually go out to take their photo, you already break down those walls of being a little bit uncomfortable with someone taking your photo. And I'm as bad as anybody about getting my photo taken. I'm like so super awkward and weird when people go to take my photo. So I take that into consideration with my clients. So setting up that foundation is everything for the actual shoot. And then when we go out to actual shoot, we talk about where they're going to go do the session. We actually do wardrobe consultations ahead of time, so they can like text us or email us whatever photos that of their outfits to make sure the outfits not only match each other if they're uncomfortable with that, but also if they are going to order any wall art from us, that the actual outfits they wear, the location that we actually choose would match their home. So if their house is very contemporary, we would try to shoot in a more contemporary place. If their house is more rustic-y kind of decor, we would actually try to go to a place that kind of fit that more. So it's very intentional, it's very thoughtful. And then, time of day, like most photographers, it's about, right around sunrise or about an hour and a half, 2 hours before sunset for an actual great lighting and all that. But I also really like people going to places that like speak to them, that they feel connected to, so that they feel natural in that environment. So I don't want to put someone like downtown Seattle when they'd rather be up in the mountains.
It's almost like Inception kind of level thinking that, I wouldn't even necessarily I don't think I would ever think about that.
Yeah.
But I guess that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
That you want it to complement them and their lifestyle. What kind of feedback then do you get from clients when they kind of get these engagement photos and are able to print them and hang them?
It's pretty awesome. I mean, that we do what's called in-person sales. So we actually sell products, books, wall art, and albums. And our clients get an image reveal / ordering session a few weeks after their shoot, whether it's family photos, engagements, or weddings. So they come to our little studio office down here in Snohomish, sit down and play them a slideshow, and I actually get to see their faces when they see their photos. And so many photographers miss out on that because they just deliver digital files, whether it's via a USB in the mail. Sometimes they'll hand that to them, but they don't get to see their reaction to it. So I actually get to see my clients reacting to their photos in person, and it's such a great validation for us as artists to see our clients, get tearing up or going, oh wow, and totally reacting to seeing the art that you create for them. And so it's such a special thing of photographers like us who do sell the products and do the in-person slideshows. It's really special.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I'm guilty of as well, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, video, it's hard too. I mean, I guess it's hard in any medium, but I think that there would definitely be like a real tangible benefit to that. And
yeah.
I got to think that is rewarding for you.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Do you ever get tired of like meeting new couples and working with new couples? I mean, obviously the answer is no.
Yeah,
no. But why is that? I guess is the more important question.
I'm a portrait photographer because I like people. It's building those relationships and getting to know people, and everybody it's amazing. There's 6 billion people on the earth or so, and imagine walking around an entire day like through a busy streets, and you won't see 2 people that look like each other, and you won't meet 2 people that are just like each other. And so there's such an amazing dynamic of different personalities of people that exist. And when you do like weddings and engagement photos, there's the love story that's behind that, and I actually talk to my clients about that. I want to draw out their emotions of their connection and all that. So I ask them about how they met and how he proposed and all those things, so that they bring out those emotions, and it very much like rises to the surface. And so the whole process is really beautiful and just amazing to be able to actually be a part of.
So obviously engagement photography, portrait photography leads to wedding photography.
Yeah. So
how long have you been, quote unquote, a wedding photographer, wedding vendor?
I've been shooting weddings for like 17 years now, but in all reality, I was one of those people who I've kind of switched my mindset over to being a business person as well as an artist. And I was always that kind of person who thought, well, if I just take better photos, people will hire me more. And that wasn't really the case. So really about 2.5 years ago is where I just kind of hunkered down and said, look, I need to change my mindset because I'm not as busy as I want to be. And so I really switched over to like changing that mindset, and I've become much more of a busier, successful wedding photographer and portrait photographer by changing that mindset. So even though I've been shooting for 17 years, I would say that realistically, I, as a business and taking myself as seriously, would be about 2 years, believe it or not.
So before that though, like you said, so you were more about maybe more so focusing on art than business. I mean, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So what were you primarily shooting then?
Just random stuff. But I mean, honestly, I went from being a person who wasn't a very good business person to being a person who I think is a pretty solid business person, and now I actually even mentor other photographers on how to be good at selling those products. And it's kind of crazy to be at that point where actually I'm able to mentor other people in areas where I personally was very unsuccessful previously.
What caused that flip?
Having kids. I mean, it was one of those where I had kids and I was working a full-time job still, and it sucked hardly ever seeing my kids because I was still getting some shoots occasionally, and I was working full-time and just barely ever getting to see my kids. And so I just got to the point where I'm like, I don't want to have a normal like day job anymore. I want to work for myself. And so I just looked at like what options I had and started really learning about the in-person sales thing and how to sell products and all that. And everything when we sell products and I mentor other people on is always doing what's in the client's best interest, no matter what. Treat everyone like they're your grandma. And so, even though I talk about like being good at sales and all of that, it's very much in the client's best interest in everything.
So you said it was when you got kids and,
Yeah.
and you're married and your wife helps you out, in the business. Well, talk about kind of that dynamic and how does that work and is that successful?
It's interesting because on some levels it's the best thing ever because most photographers and most videographers like yourself, we're kind of like one people armies. We have to do all these things ourselves. We don't have anybody to kind of kick our tails into gear if we're having a bad day. We often don't have people to bounce ideas off of. And so my wife has a very good acumen for all of that, and she's been doing tons of research and helping out with so many areas. And like I told her earlier, I showed her a photo and she said that this photo I'd taken was like one of the greatest photos she'd seen like at Dairyland, which is a location down the street. And I told her that I took that compliment with a higher level of like wow than I would like from some famous photographer because she is my own worst critic. And it's really cool to have somebody who actually like holds you accountable and pushes you. But on the flip side of working with your wife, it's really hard to separate that and talk about other things that aren't photography business and still maintain a marriage. So actually right now she's actually kind of working her way back out of the business, and it's going to be me taking over more so she can actually just kind of like be a wife and not always a business partner, because it's a tough balance. It's a really tough balance. As much as it's awesome and it helps out, it's difficult.
Yeah, it's got to be, my Dorothy's the teacher and kind of does her own thing during the day, and we kind of check in from time to time, and I go to her school and stuff. But yeah, it's like when you live and what you eat and what you do, or what do they, I don't know, whatever the saying is.
Yeah.
But so is that going to be a challenge then when she moves out, or do you feel like you've set yourself up now to be more successful?
We've been setting it up. So a lot of systems in place. So we have like a studio management / client software that we've been implementing. We've had interns that have been helping out. So we're transitioning from one intern to another just because the intern's in college and works and all that. So she's less available. So we have a new intern coming on who's going to be helping out with a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. And then one of them we're looking into right now is actually starting to outsource our photo editing. So it's expensive, but hopefully it creates a better work-life balance for us. So actually I spend more time with my kids and my wife, and I can focus more on like the behind the scenes business aspects as well.
Yeah, and you can focus more on the clients. If that's always the thing. And even with video, I'll even like talk with like the grandpa at the wedding, and they'll be like, oh man, you got to go home and go through all this footage. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, I really wish like I could just be at the wedding and then go to the next wedding. But then there's, it's 80% or 90% is the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
So before you got into photography, you said you were working, talk about kind of that balance of what you were doing before.
Where I worked?
Yeah.
So I worked for Costco. So actually worked in the stores for a long time, and I also actually did photography for Costco's corporate office. So there's like one main day-to-day photographer, and for a while I was actually the secondary photographer that was there. And even though it was an amazing experience and it sounds good for the resume, it was taking me away from actually like spending more time in my own business. And to be honest, the commute sucked. Going all the way to Issaquah every day. So it was not very good balance before. So as of just about a year ago, I went part-time with Costco. So I just worked there in the evenings occasionally, and just to get benefits basically, because health insurance is obviously extremely expensive. So I just worked there part-time for benefits to be able to provide benefits for my wife and my 2 little boys. But yeah, it's been a great opportunity to have had that career. I've actually honestly worked there for 20 years, which is kind of crazy. Makes me feel old, but yeah, and it's been great. Ever since I went part-time, the income's only gone up, and my clients are way happier, and I'm running a much better business now, and it's all like for my clients. Everything I do is for my clients. It's been great.
Yeah, it's tough when you have a full-time job and you're trying to devote and I think the energy maybe you spend on trying to move around to other things, you don't have then to be creative, or
exactly.
You don't have then. So obviously now you feel like that's a good balance, and your clients are happy. In terms of like, weddings and approaching the wedding day, how do you kind of differentiate what you do in terms of like storytelling, or in terms of like your approach to the wedding day and kind of the deliverables you give?
So it all starts from the communications. So I, on average, from the time that I actually meet with my clients in person for the first time till well after the wedding, it can be up to about 14 times in person where I actually meet with my clients, which is completely crazy. I did the math on it like earlier this year, and I came up with like, I think the number was like 9 or 10, and then my wife and I went over it again, and we're like, okay, it's actually closer to 14 times we'll actually interact with our clients in person. So most all of it is the initial setup of just getting to know them. And again, I can't stress it enough, building that trust. Portrait photography is all about trust. You have to be their friend. You have to get to know them. And then when you do, it just opens up that relationship like it would in normal everyday life of getting to know somebody, and you start finding out more intimate details. And the more comfortable people get, the better the photos of them are, because they don't have that barrier that comes up there. And it's so crazy how much a lack of trust will show up in a photo. Or like the other day I was shooting portraits for a guy who's running for US Senate, and he's a Harvard graduated physician, and he got a little nervous about the photos, and he clenched his fist kind of tight, and it works its way right up your arm, into your shoulders, up your neck, and right into your face, and you can actually see it in a photo. So the whole build-up initially is just making people feel comfortable, getting to know them, learning their love story, and then it just carries through when you're there taking their pictures. At that point, it's like my session last night. I've been meeting with those clients several times now. They've stopped in here to introduce me to their daughter and just come visit. So they definitely turn into friends, and I want my clients to hire me for life. So they just get so comfortable that there's no awkwardness that happens. And then all of our weddings include a leather album, and some products on some of the upper collections and all that. So we want people to know that we're there for them for the whole process. We're not flaking on them. We respond to emails and phone calls extremely quickly, and we're going to provide them with the most stunning artwork that's archival, that's going to last for decades, if not centuries. They're super high quality, really beautiful. So the whole process is all the way through.
Do you like doing weddings as a concept, or is it just that you like doing portraits of people and then weddings are the next logical step?
I don't know. I think it's kind of a balance of both of those. It's kind of deep thought on that one.
Right.
But
I every once in a while.
Yeah, no, it's good. I would say I just like the people connection in general, but yeah, I'm kind of one of those weird sappy dudes who I love all that kind of stuff. Like the first look of a wedding where the groom gets to see the bride, coming from a male photographer perspective, we tend to see things how our own world is. And so I think that's super special to have the groom get to see the bride in the dress and get that shot of his face. Because let's be honest, weddings are generally about the bride and not so much about the groom. So that's the one shot that's really about the groom. And it's such a special moment. And I always completely encourage my clients to do the first look well before the actual ceremony, so that it's actually much more intimate for the groom to actually get to see her. But yeah, so I mean, weddings are beautiful. I love all the aspects of weddings and people actually building that bond. I believe in the state of marriage and everything that it is. So yeah, I mean, whether it's a giant crazy wedding with 600 people, or the one I'm doing tomorrow is an elopement for 2 people, and it's going to be me, an assistant, and then the groom's parents just for the ceremony with the bride and groom. They're all amazing. I mean, as long as the bride and groom really love each other and there's that connection that's there, all of it's amazing. Absolutely adore it.
Do you find, and I have, in terms of our summer season this year, do you find a lot more weekday elopements and weddings and things? Because what's today? Tuesday, so tomorrow. Are you seeing more of that, or have you seen
I have different pricing for elopements. So my elopement pricing is for weekdays.
Okay.
So that way I can keep the weekends free from the actual normal traditional weddings.
But do you see a lot more of those happening? That's what I'm saying. I see it's been an increase this year over the last 2 for me in terms of elopements during the week.
I have more weekend weddings. Almost all my weddings are on Saturdays. But I do have one Sunday wedding. I actually have a Thursday wedding, a traditional wedding, but on a Thursday. And then I have an elopement that's on a Wednesday. So yeah, but people often these days, it seems, get married kind of based on the date. It's 2018, so all the photographers I know and all the videographers I know are slammed in August, especially on August 18th. we kind of have a running joke amongst photographers and videographers that there's not going to be any wedding vendors left if anybody last minute decided to actually get married on August 18th, because it's 8/18/18 if you didn't catch that yet.
Which is funny, because like the way that I have that too, and the way that like I do the date on my videos, I always just do like August whatever in the year. So like you wouldn't even like, and that's what's, because we had a client that got married on 7/1/17.
Yeah.
And I wrote it as July 1st. And in all my everything, and even on the video, it wasn't until I think it was like the father of the bride was like, "Well, 7/1/17." I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
So, do you prefer the larger scale, or do you prefer the more intimate, smaller weddings?
I don't shy away from the large ones, but I prefer the smaller ones for sure. I think that it's a bit easier for us to be able to actually make better connections when there's less people. But I mean, big weddings can be a blast too. There's certainly nothing wrong with it. I just think generally like my wheelhouse of like where I'm comfortable, and I think a lot of weddings are really fun, is when they are smaller. My own wedding to my wife Chelsea, we had, I think it was like, we still debate on it, we have to go back and count, but it's somewhere between like 30 and 34 people, including ourselves. It was really tiny, and it was awesome.
Where'd you guys get married at?
Kama Beach State Park on Camano Island, and it is stupid beautiful up there. Absolutely amazing.
Did you guys have good photography?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I actually had a couple of friends who were like it was like they're amateurish. Like one of them's taking her business much more seriously and upping her skills, and she's a lot better now. But both of them did a great job. They did good. We didn't get like the most like big time wedding photographers.
Was there things that you learned from kind of your own wedding and photography that you want to either emulate or improve on now that when you work, like having gone through it?
A little bit. I think if anything, it was just one of them was because our one of our wedding vendors ran late, even though I stressed to them I didn't think they're going to have enough time. So I'm not going to name names, but one of our wedding vendors ran late, and we just didn't have enough time. So one of the things I really encourage my couples, so it's not even my shooting, it's actually setting up the rest of the day. I really encourage my wedding vendors, or my wedding clients, to strongly evaluate that I go over with them as the timeline, to make sure that the timeline actually makes sense, so that they have enough time to get all the photos they want to get, and not feel rushed or stressed, because it just makes the wedding day so much more smooth, and they'll get all the different shots and looks that they want.
Yeah, I do think having a realistic timeline is funny. I always remember the one a couple years ago, and they had us arriving at the hotel at like 2, putting the dress on at 2:05, and then we were going to do the first look at the Tacoma Environmental Services building, which was like a 25-minute drive away, like at 2:20. And I was like, this is going to be really interesting to show up. I mean, even just getting your wedding dress on could take half an hour, depending on...
It usually actually does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost never less than half an hour. I actually allot at least half an hour for it. I never tell people that it should be less than half an hour to even get the dress on.
But so do you find, though, that you do a pretty good job of like establishing realistic expectations for your clients in terms of timeline?
I do. It doesn't. I mean, most of the time it follows through, but it's still, things happen. Sometimes like people run late, or so you can't. We have no control over it. But as far as my ability to kind of guide them, I feel pretty confident in the fact that, like, generally speaking, if I tell them they don't have enough time and they run out of time, I warn them.
Does being married, does that affect you as a wedding vendor? Does that make you more sentimental on the day, or more, taking more care? I mean, or did you take as much care before and now it just is continuing?
Probably a little bit more of being married, but to be honest, I think being a dad. So, going through the process of actually taking these kids from the moment that they're born, and man, it's tough. The first couple of years, especially, my kids are almost 2.5 and almost 4 years old. They're little, and you love them to death, but they're not easy. It's like a full-time job that you like to have for 18 years, 7 days a week. So knowing how much work it takes to raise these little kids into adults, and then picturing my kids getting married, like, I get like teary-eyed just ever thinking about that. So I now view weddings as these are these people's kids. So, like, seeing the parents' reactions to their kids during the wedding day kind of changed everything for me. Like, it really was one of those where I never had any thought about it really. It was like, oh yeah, it's like the mom of the bride, you know, the dad of the bride, you know, all that. But it was never like any kind of like real emotional connection to that. And now I'm like sappy, like tearing up whenever I see, you know, like the other day it was the bride dancing with her dad. And the mom was sitting there with her hand on her chin, and she just had tears streaming down her face with the biggest smile you'd ever seen a human have. And like I was like wiping off tears off of my face because it was just so beautiful to see.
Yeah, that's interesting because I do think that sometimes, you know, like the first dance is kind of the big, and then I do think sometimes the like it gets shortchanged on like the father daughter and the mother son, you know, and you know maybe like they're kind of having their moment, and I don't know. Sometimes if I'm filming and you might see people walking around and stuff, so I mean you're taking it the other way. I mean not the vendors walking around, but the guests.
Yeah,
but you're taking it the other way. That you think that you find a way more emotion in that now.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty incredible. And so I try to definitely take notice of that and pay attention to that even throughout the wedding day, of recognizing the importance of the parents being there. Because as like all of us having parents and us being kids to parents of some sort, we can't really understand how much our parents have done for us until we become parents ourselves and then kind of have a couple of years of practice. And then you're like, wow, I was kind of crappy to my parents before. So, you know, I mean, it's like, not to get too deep on that part of it, but it definitely makes me have a whole new respect for the parents on the wedding day, because you just see them and most of the time they're just glowing.
Do you find yourself trying to capture more kind of intimate moments in between them, or like kind of pay more attention to that like during the reception and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, you know, on the wedding day, the emphasis is the bride and groom. But a lot of times what I'll do is we'll be getting like the shots of the bride and groom together. And, you know, often like the mom or dad are kind of standing there in the background. And so I'll usually just kind of quickly turn around and grab a couple shots of them and try to get candid shots without them actually like looking at the camera of them there. And I usually have second shooters for all of our weddings. And so I'll usually have the second shooter definitely keep an eye on the parents and try to get some candid shots of them as well. Just observing and, you know, just getting their actual natural reactions to what's going on.
Yeah, we had a wedding a couple years ago in Woodinville, and I remember the father of the groom actually was, you know, he was, the groom himself wasn't like super emotive. I mean, he was, you know, really nice, just, you know, reserved.
Yeah.
And, you know, his dad was, you know, kind of gruff. And I remember then when they actually did their first dance, and, you know, we just happened to be kind of set perfectly where it was at DeLille in the cake room, and the dad was just over their shoulder, and like, you know, you could do like the focus from them dancing to him, and he's like sobbing, sobbing. But you know, and like, if you're not paying attention to that, right? Like as a photographer, like that moment's gone, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it really is, right? Talk about the importance of like capturing those fleeting moments where, you know, if you don't have, or like if you don't have the video or the photo of it, like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the wedding day goes by so fast that it's really hard to kind of remember all those little details. So that's kind of the beauty of why we're there. And it's so important to hire like professional wedding industry people. And it's not just saying, oh, well, this person's a good photographer. A good photographer can take great pictures, but it doesn't mean that they have the experience to actually think of those things. Like you said, I didn't think of that and I didn't think of that. That's what, to me, like makes a person a really like professional. You know, it's not just taking pretty pictures. It's about actually being very thoughtful and intentional so that you know the importance of those things. And, you know, the flip side of it, like it's kind of a goofy thing, but often the parents are paying for or helping to pay for this as well. And I think it's a bit of a kind of a slap in the face to them if you don't actually show some respect towards that and actually get shots of them as well.
Yeah, we had a mother of the bride that was, you know, she was like we were doing bridesmaids photos, and she's like, oh, you know, do you think it's okay if I? And I'm like, yeah, get in there, you know, like it's
absolutely,
it's, you know, it's your day too, you know, but it's the bride's day, but it's your day too, you know. I mean,
Yeah, my theory on that part is that, you know, generally speaking, we're there as wedding professionals to kind of help guide things, because obviously most all of our clients haven't gotten married before, but it's also our job to kind of just document what happens and not necessarily dictate everything. And so if the mom wants to jump in there, as long as the bride's not giving me the, you know, staring in the eyes, shaking her head real fast, like, no, stop this, let's do it. Let's get that shot. You know, that's to me, like, if the mom wants to go in there and no one bats an eye against it, absolutely.
Is there something, you know, you've learned now, kind of having gone through weddings, you know, that you wish that you would have known, 5-10 years ago, kind of going through that? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things, but like, what's a couple big lessons you've learned in terms of like how you approach the day now, or what's important, or maybe what you thought was important before?
Most of it is communication ahead of time. So I actually meet with my couples usually about 1 to 3 weeks before their wedding day and just go over all the details. And that's the biggest thing is that really clear communication ahead of time of having no surprises, so that when it comes around to the wedding day, if they're going to do like a special little like pouring the sand together or melting candles together, whatever else during the ceremony. So yeah, it's just a matter of like all of that communication sets up a really easy wedding day. Because, a lot of other photographers who are like family photographers, they don't want to shoot weddings because they're super stressful to them. But if you go into it and you have a really good plan and you know all the details, what spot to stand at what point during the ceremony so you can get that one perfect shot because they're going to do a certain thing. If you communicate it all ahead of time super carefully, it's not really a surprise, and you just know how to do all of that. So, it's one of those where if you talk to like, professional athletes and all that, they'll tell you how important it is to perform on the day of the game, but every one of them will always talk about the preparation that goes into it. And if you don't have the proper preparation, you won't succeed when it's like the game day, air quotes of game day. But, it's that idea that you just, the more you know going into it, the better everything turns out.
Yeah, it's true. And I've tried to get really good too about kind of like my because I think my opinion is not all videographers are. I do think like I try to emulate photography in terms of like, how you guys go about, making sure you have the right timeline and the right, all the contact info and all the locations and everything. Because, I look back at like, our first year and I was like, how did I even know like their names? Yeah. Or like how, like I knew the venue and like to be there at 2:00, but like, I wasn't the best about that. And, I do think that like, I feel, and I think the clients appreciate and feel like, they're in good hands with you.
It goes back to trust. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, 100%. It's us being professional. You go back to the sports idea of, if you talk about like the local football team here, the Seattle Seahawks, if they're going to play against an opponent, they study that opponent. They study and they practice and they mentally prepare themselves for every possible outcome, every scenario. And, a wedding obviously isn't like an opponent, but it's the same idea. If you go into it and you have that mindset of actually like being mentally prepared and actually doing your homework ahead of time and just making sure your mindset and all of your kind of game plan is there. Honestly, like this is going to sound like not that good, but weddings are easy. I mean, they really aren't that hard. They're not stressful. It's just fun, and it's a great opportunity to be able to document someone's love story on a really amazing day at a beautiful place with them looking their best.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's not hard when everything is people are dressed to the nines and they're looking the best that they're ever going to look, and you just not hang out, but you get to take part in that, and you have your camera along. Do you ever find yourself? Do you still get excited for weddings, or is it just another day at work, or how do you pump yourself up for each wedding?
Most of it as far as like getting pumped up is because we've already spent so much time with these couples ahead of time. We have like the initial consultation booking, pre-engagement shoot, meetup, shoot the engagement photos, the image reveal session after their engagement session. They come in and pick up the products from us, and then they come in and meet with us before the wedding. So they meet with us 6 times before the wedding day in person. And if they order wall art and we come and deliver it to their house for them, and we actually hang wall art on the wall for them. So that could be 7 times that we'd actually interact with them in person before the wedding day. And so generally speaking, these people, they're like family by the time the wedding day comes around. So, people don't realize how much wedding professionals do behind the scenes. It's usually like the night before your guys' wedding, we're going through and actually gathering all of our gear and checking all of our batteries and make sure the batteries are all full and charged, and going through our bag like 15 times to make sure that all the lenses are all in there and all the gear's there. And then we're usually going to bed early because we want to be well rested for you guys, and then we're eating like healthy meals that day and preparing meals and everything else. So everything leading up to the wedding is like kind of hyper focused of like going through everything and making sure that you have like everything quadruple checked, if not more. And then once you get there and you get to see the couples, it's just fun at that point, and all the preparation sets it up. So once you actually start shooting, it's really just, you stay focused, but you get to have a blast. It's so much fun.
One thing I think got buried in there is that if you have Dan Manning shoot your portraits and buy a wall art, he will actually come to your house and hang the wall art. So I think that should be a more higher selling point that you guys put on your list.
Yeah.
No, but I do think, and I think with video too, but with photography, you do deal a lot with like the Uncle Bob that could shoot it, or like, we all know Uncle Bob, or like, oh, my friend from college, a sorority girl, whatever is going to shoot it.
Yeah.
But when it is what you do, every month, every week, every weekend, you're ready to go, right?
Yeah.
And so there's not like, even like you said, the preparation, like I just have like my gear and I just know like I just need all this stuff today. Talk about kind of that differentiation between, you being like super prepared versus like maybe like a family friend that could also be like an awesome photographer, but
yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing like we talked about. I mean, it's kind of going over the same thing, but to address that, it's about being very prepared, and we have, all of us as like photographers, any wedding photographer will have 2 camera bodies that we're each shooting with, or we have an extra one in the bag. We have professional lenses that are, like thousands of dollars each. So we have all the professional gear, but like the idea of Uncle Bob, Uncle Bob's kind of like that guy who's at every wedding who has his camera and he's like an amateur photographer and kind of thinks he knows more what he's doing than he probably actually should. He's a little overconfident. So we have all the nice gear and all that, but again, it's all the preparation and years of experience behind the scenes that really make the difference. Wedding photography is about taking great photos, but it's about establishing that trust, and it's about building a relationship and having a really good game plan for the day of their wedding, so that when those situations arise, or you just compared to like the guy who's like the family friend, it makes all the difference in the world. But you still have to take great photos too. I mean, obviously it's super important, and if we don't have great photos, what's the point of all the great customer service and all the preparation? So they very much go hand in hand.
So you were telling me off air before we got started, you've got a really cool opportunity coming up this summer with a surprise proposal, right?
Yeah.
So talk about, specifically that, but then the idea of proposal photography too, because obviously that's like the pre-wedding, pre-engagement, like that's where it all begins. So talk about that.
So a guy who is kind of like a friend of a friend who added me as a friend on Facebook a long time ago. He's been like a good supporter of photography as far as like liking a lot of Facebook posts and commenting and all that. Is wanting to propose to his longtime girlfriend, and so he contacted me with a pretty like solid game plan already in place, and so he is chartering a Kenmore Air seaplane, float plane. So he's actually going to have me go down to Kenmore. He's going to give me some supplies, so I'm going to have a table and chair and like linens and all that. I'm going to hop on a float plane by myself, and the pilot is going to fly me, his supplies, and my camera gear up to a remote lake in the Cascades, so kind of on the way to Stevens Pass. Land the float plane on the lake and pull up to this tiny little sandy beach that's up there. Help me get the gear out of the plane, and then he's going to leave me there by myself at this super remote lake for about an hour and a half while he actually flies back to pick up the couple. So as far as she knows, she's just going to be hopping on a float plane for a scenic flight, and then I'm not quite sure if she knows that they're going to be landing on a lake for lunch or whatever, but so they're going to be landing on the lake, so I'll actually be hiding in the woods on the side of the hill, shooting photos of the plane coming into land, and obviously them getting out of the airplane, and then him popping down on a knee and actually proposing to her, and getting like those really cool behind the scene candid shots. And so pretty amazing experience coming up. All my photographer friends are either super excited, jealous, or terrified for me of getting left up in the mountains for an hour and a half. So yes, and if anybody's wondering, I'm actually either going to be buying or borrowing some bear spray from somebody to have up there, because it's definitely in the wild.
As somebody that I had my proposal photographed, best decision I've ever made. I mean, I would say of anything for our wedding, because I didn't realize how, and I should have, like how important the proposal was.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was nice and whatever, but like my wife has told that story
Yep.
1,000 times, and I just didn't realize, like, again, like, I hadn't been married yet. I wasn't sentimental or like tuned into all that stuff.
Yep.
So like, I didn't get that. And like now, like anybody, like even video, like we've done, video proposals, but like at least like get your, whether it's a friend that's hiding in the bushes or whether you're hiring Dan to come out, like, because she has told that story 1,000 times. She has it on her phone. She shows everybody the photos.
Absolutely.
I think even more than our wedding photos, really, because it was like, she knew the wedding day was coming, but you don't know.
Yeah.
Do you do a lot of other proposals, or are you going to try to do more? Or?
Yeah, I've done some in the past, and I definitely would love to do more because, the storytelling of people's romance and love story, that's kind of the foundation. I mean, it's obviously like you have to meet and have your first date and your courtship and all that kind of stuff, but as far as like the actual like marriage itself, it's all based on the proposal. And so it's funny how you say that. I had my dad, who has no photography experience whatsoever. I had my parents help me kind of set it all up, and I had my dad the night before with my big like fancy professional camera and my big like telephoto lens, showed him how to use all the settings and all that, and had my dad hiding in the bushes to actually shoot photos of me proposing as well. So so I'm totally there, and it's really important. Even if you don't hire a professional photographer, like get somebody who's like, honestly, it's like hire a professional photographer, you'll get better photos. But like bring a friend who your soon to be fiance doesn't even know, and have them just sit there and pretend like they're taking pictures of their cell phone and get a video of it, because it's a really beautiful experience, and it's something that you guys will never forget. Yeah, I had a couple that we corresponded a lot, but we had just done everything on email, that they were out of town, and we couldn't really meet up before the wedding. And when I was getting ready to do their blog post, I had gone back and looked at like their wedding website, and they had had the I think it was like 2 angles of people with cell phones taking it, but like even that for me, like I was like, oh my gosh, like I just felt like I got to know them so much more and like really experience that. And like these are people like we had a great day and we really got along, but like I felt even more connected to them having seen that, because it is like, along with your wedding, it is like such a just an emotional time. I mean, it really is. You had said that the guy kind of met up with you through social media. I'm really curious kind of your thoughts about, using social media to market, not only like kind of word of mouth and networking, but I mean, what are your thoughts? And you're pretty, like I said, kind of in the intro, pretty prolific in terms of like, commenting and giving advice and posting and things online. What's your mentality behind that? I mean, number one is stay active, post a good amount. Don't be annoying with how much you post, but, it's definitely post a good amount on social media. Be thoughtful, try to like, whether it's connecting with other people who are in your industry and being supportive of them, or reaching out to clients and just saying, hey, look, even if you don't hire me, let me help you find a great professional photographer who actually knows what they're doing. Because Uncle Bob, he might take great photos, but it doesn't mean that he actually knows what he's doing. But yeah, social media, it's just one tool. I don't rely on it too much. I mean, I'm one of those people who fully says that if I wasn't a photographer and trying to grow a business, I might not even have a Facebook page. But it's a nice way to get to know people who you wouldn't normally get to know, or for people to get to know you, continuing those long-term relationships. And I mean, honestly, I have some like fantastic friends that I've met through social media that live on the other side of the country, and we occasionally like fly to each other to like go snowboarding together and hang out and all that. So it is incredible, but yeah, social media is just one tool. I mean, I mostly go with word of mouth as far as any kind of marketing. I want my client experience to be incredible and second to none. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing that I would ever say, that, besides hopefully people think our photos are absolutely stunning, and we usually get pretty good feedback on that. Outside of that, our customer service is hopefully going to be considered second to none. And so, to me, that's the core of like our marketing that we do. Social media is just one of those landing places for people to actually get to like go and see, oh, yep, he's an active photographer. He's not a person who's like just kind of a hobbyist or whatever else. And so it's a tool to connect with people, and it's great, but it's not everything to me either.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a tough line. I mean, I think nowadays, I think it could be kind of like all consuming or not. And so, I worked with a photographer on Saturday, and they said like, oh, we don't really do it at all, right? And then there's on the other side where there's people that post, pretty regularly. So, I never know, right? And that's kind of why I'm kind of curious what people think about it.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is that the biggest thing that people can do well on social media, and there's some people who are fantastic at it, like I'll say Tiffany Burke Photography is out of Tacoma. She is heroic as far as truly, really being authentic when it comes to online presence, because she spills the real stuff of like showing photos of what your body looks like when you gain like 60 pounds, whatever it was, after she had a baby. And so it's hard because generally speaking, most people on social media don't put out like the worst moments. So it's really not often very authentic. And it is a fine balance because you don't want to like come across as like a whiner if you're trying to be authentic. And so it's a really hard balance. But social media is always a bit kind of contrived. It's always a bit kind of phony, I think, because people just generally aren't always themselves. And so I try to find that balance of like being honest and real, but not coming across as like a whiny person, but also being real and true with people. I think it's a really important factor.
Do you find though it's helpful in terms of connecting with clients and staying in touch and kind of knowing, like you said, that they know that you're a real person and that, you are legit and are good at what you do?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's definitely important, is establishing like that you're up to date, you're current, you're actively working. So I think that if you don't have an online presence of a website, a blog, an Instagram, and a Facebook page as a photographer, if people go to your site and they see that you haven't posted anything in 6 months, it looks like you're just out of business. I mean, you walk by any like tangible like goods store and nothing changed in 6 months and you haven't seen the open sign on once, no one's going to even give you any thought that you're actually a legit business. So it's kind of hard as a photographer because we're human beings, but we're also businesses. And so we have a hard time kind of separating that and demonstrating that to potential clients or our current clients that we have that. So one thing I do is we actually have a Facebook group for our clients. I mean, I specifically have one for our brides and grooms so that they actually can connect with each other if they have questions, as well as connecting with us in a more private and kind of safe space, so it's not so public. And so I've seen things in like photographer like Facebook groups where photographers get annoyed because clients try to add them as a friend on Facebook. And to me, it's the funniest thing in the world, because when a client adds me as a friend on Facebook, I pretty much know I have them as a client for life because I gave them an amazing experience as a business coming from me as a person. And so to add people to that Facebook group, they basically have to become friends with me. I can't add them to it unless they're actually a Facebook friend. So that's one of those things where I love it, and I get clients who love that as well. And it's a really cool thing to actually build that real authenticity.
Yeah, and I do think I'm the exact same way, and I always find that funny. And like I've said a lot of times, like that's the reason like to do the podcast and to do everything is, having that accessibility, right? And at least like having people be able to like, hear from you and kind of see that. We'll wrap up here soon. I want to talk about, you have the storefront here, like the Seattle wedding, Snohomish wedding tour.
Yeah.
Talk about, as a photographer, building that brand out in terms of like, not that you have to have a physical location, but you do, having a brand. Talk about the importance of that and like, struggles that is, or is that easygoing, or what are your thoughts behind having that brand kind of out there?
Yeah, I think it's hard for a lot of people, like as business owners, especially like as a photographer. We're people, so we're people who are businesses, and so it's kind of hard to build a brand that's you as a person, but it's not necessarily directly you, if that makes sense. And so it's a kind of like weird balance on that one. So for me, it was going through and like evaluating like who I am and how I want my business to be seen by potential clients that reflects what they'll actually get when they meet with me. And so if you like look at my logo, it's basically kind of like, it's supposed to be a rough outline of like Mount Rainier, but it's also a bit in the shape of like a traditional kind of diamond. So it's kind of that blend of like, and it has some trees in the bottom of it, and it's green and gray and all that. So it's the kind of blend of like the wedding kind of feel, but nature and all that. And I'm definitely a person who loves being outside and being really active. Like I said, my pillows on my couch are in the shape of mountains. I have furniture in my studio that I built with my own hands out of wood and all that. So the bench Reed's actually sitting on, actually made with my own two hands. And then I have a little cabinet that's in here that houses a mini fridge, and it's like a shelf space, and has a cabinet underneath of it as well. I actually designed it on a sheet of paper and built it myself, and I purposely made it kind of rustic-y and all that. So everything in here, like, you know, to sound like fancy with the word curated, but everything in here was like very specifically curated. Even like we said, we sell products. The art that we sell to our clients we spent 8 months. I mean, legitimately 8 months selecting very specifically what we would carry, because if I love it and you hire me because you like who I am as a person, you like my art, and you like the experience that I give you, we tend to have a lot in common as it is. So more than likely, you're going to end up loving the products that I have to offer. And so everything has been extremely intentional.
And I think that that's a great point to make, that, you know, I get emails sometimes where they're like, hey, you know, I like your price, or I like your whatever, but I like this other person's work, or I like this other thing. And I do think that, like, you know, connecting with who you want to work with, and like really liking that work, and the, you know, the whole like feeling of that, I think is really important, because ultimately, right, like, you want everybody to be happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you come in here and you see what's on the walls and you're happy with that, you know, and that excites you, right, then you're going to be excited at the end, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's all about just, like I said, I can say this a million times over, and I can't stress it enough. Doing everything in our client's best interest is everything. I was just listening to an audiobook, and it's one of those like kind of like traditional like how to close the deal, art of sale kind of thing. And but it was great. It's one of my favorite guys. His name is Brian Tracy. He's a really great like speaker and all that. But one of the things he's talking about is, if you are a business and you want to continue to do business with the person that you're doing business with, and you're negotiating a contract, which is what anybody's doing by hiring me or how I run my business, you have to make it amicable on both sides. You have to make a profit to run a business. And of course, like, if anybody, you know, recognizes any business that you want to stay in business and you want to support, you want them to be profitable, but you also want good value on your side of it. And so everything I do is to make sure that, yes, I'm staying in business and I'm not burning myself out, so I continue to be their photographers for life. But at the same time, I want them to know that, like, they're going to get an experience and that nobody can even match. And on the flip side of that, there's still great value in that one, in it. And they know that it's just a pampering experience where they don't have to stress. There's no work for them.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you so much for letting me come here today, visit your studio. I know we had some technical difficulties getting started, so I appreciate you helping me work through those. If people want to know more about you and who you are and what you're all about, what would you have them do and check out?
So our website is www.danmanningphotography.com. Instagram is just Dan Manning Photography. We have a Facebook page, so it's just Dan Manning Photo is like the thing that's on there, but you can search for Dan Manning Photography. And you can call us at 206-334-3233. And if you'd like my email, it's just danmanningphotography@gmail.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Come back next week and check out another wedding vendor interview. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you. Appreciate it a lot.
Thanks. Bye.